My name is Sarah, and today I'm filming the next video in my declutter series. If you watched my first one, which I will link in the cards now, it was my eyeshadow palette declutter. Got rid of nearly half of my collection, but I did have a third category I had to keep, get rid of, and then a third category which was depot, and that is what I'm here to film today. I have never depotted an eyeshadow palette, so I thought it might be interesting to film myself attempting that process for the first time. I had 4 palettes that I decided to depot. One is this custom-made ColourPop palette, which is already magnetic, so these I won't have to do much labor. I'll just pop them out and put them into my larger palette. The second was this She Glam Beach Sunset palette. Looks like that. The third was my Dominique Cosmetics Berries and Cream. This was a newer one to me, and I really enjoy these formulas, but some of these shades I won't use, and I hate the clunky packaging. And the last one was my Jaclyn Hill Morphe palette. This is the original palette she created with them, and I love this, but it's so big. So these are the palettes I will be embarking on depotting today. I have this double-sided Adept Cosmetics magnetic palette that has this divider in the middle. I also purchased, because I did not own it, a depotting tool which came with a few different sizes of adhesive magnets. So I will link this set. I got this on Amazon. I'll link that below, and I know these palettes are sold on Amazon, so I will link those as well. This one I purchased used on Poshmark. Box cutter. I would have preferred a smaller sort of X-Acto knife, but I don't have one, so instead of purchasing one, I'm gonna try and make this work. So hopefully I will not destroy too many eyeshadows, but in the name of science and discovery, let's go ahead and get into it. So I mentioned this in my last video, but I film on my phone, so trying to do overhead shots are less than ideal. So I believe this is the best I can do for today, but hopefully this will suffice. So the first one I'm going to depot is the Path of Least Resistance, which is just this custom ColourPop palette, and I'm not going to be decluttering my single eyeshadows in this video. This will simply be removing them and getting them in here, and then the next video to go up on my channel will be my single shadow declutter. Okay, all done. For my first actual craft project, I'm going to start with this one. So since this and actually the other 2 palettes I'm attempting to depot today are all cardboard palettes, I'm essentially just going to start by cutting around the edges of each to try and detach this from the rest of the palette. And I have no idea how this is going to work out, but let us find out together. Okay, that was pretty easy. It looks like the pans are just glued on pretty strongly though. So I do have a heater over here that I may end up needing to use to kind of melt some of the glue on these, but I'm just gonna try to see sort of gently. Yeah, these are really on there. So I think I'm gonna set this against my heater and see if I can let some of the adhesive melt or soften a little bit. Okay, I'm certain you will hear the heater in the background. My apologies. So let's start on this one next. I'm just going to do the same thing I did with the last one. Okay, success. Only one casualty so far. Quite a lot of trash. Wanted to grab this one off my heater and just see. Alright, so I've just broken this one as well, but I think really I have this shade from the Jaclyn Hill palette that's definitely not an exact match, but it's close enough for this one that I don't feel the need to continue on with that. So not too bad. With this one, I actually had to, I'm not sure if you could tell, but I ultimately had to go underneath the adhesive and almost just dig it out and then peel the adhesive off the back. So that was definitely more difficult. Okay, last up is this one, which I have had on the heater. I have not heard anything about the ease or difficulty of which this palette can be depotted, but I have seen a few Dominique Cosmetics shadows show up in other people's magnetic palettes, so fingers crossed, y'all. Okay, so no casualties so far on that one. Feeling good. They're all depotted, so now I'm going to go off camera and try and get the glue removed from the backs. And I did discover that the Dominique Cosmetics shadows are magnetic, so for those I won't have to put magnets on the back. I just have to get the glue off, which is quite sticky, as this one I had in front of the heater for quite some time. So yeah, I just have to get the glue off of those and they'll be good to pop in there. So I will be back for the magnetizing process. Okay, I have removed all the adhesive from the backs of the shadows, and now I'm gonna work on magnetizing and getting them into the palette. So I tried to adjust in an effort to get a better overhead shot. So bear with me, experimentation. So as I mentioned, these Dominique Cosmetics shadows are actually already magnetic. So these I'm just gonna pop in. These are the shadows from the She Glam palette that I was able to depot without damaging, and these are not magnetic. So I definitely need magnets for these. Okay, that was easy. Now I'm gonna flip this around to the other side, and all of my Jaclyn Hill Morphe eyeshadows are going to go on this side. Okay, so here is my finished depotting project. I'm really pleased with how this turned out. I'm really surprised that I did not lose more shadows than I did. So having done that process for the first time, I am surprised. I thought it would be more difficult than that, but there were definitely a few things I learned that I would like to share, just in case you're thinking about doing your own depotting project and you, like me, have never done one before. So the first thing I want to address is the mess. My hands are covered. I've washed them already, but they are still covered in glitter. I broke fingernails. There's stuff everywhere. There's adhesive stuck to myself, stuck to my tools that I used, stuck to the blanket I put down. So do be prepared for a gigantic mess. You will have shadows that break. Your finger will inadvertently dig into a shadow. So I would strongly recommend doing this either on a surface like a tabletop that can easily be wiped off, or if, like me, you're doing it on a carpet, put down a towel or a blanket to protect your carpet. I also had this that I was using. This is just like a generic makeup eraser that I have dampened, and this was great. As I was going along, I could use it to kind of wipe off my fingers and set aside. So that was the first suggestion. The second thing to touch on is the tools. I can't imagine having done this project without. And I don't know that you have to have a depotting tool specifically. I could see potentially if you have like a manicure kit or something of that nature, maybe already having a tool similar enough to this that it would work. The one thing I will say is having something that had a pointed end was quite helpful. The other thing that was incredibly important with this was how thin these are. So if you don't have something that's quite this thin, if you don't have a tool with a point, that might be worth looking into acquiring. And in terms of the X-Acto knife or box cutter, this was perfectly fine. I know I mentioned in my intro that I wished I had maybe considered purchasing a smaller knife tool. That's just not necessary. If you have anything like this, this is perfect. Magnets also. These came with my depotting tool in the set I purchased on Amazon, which again I will link below. So if you don't have magnets, you've got to get these. As I discovered, some of the pans I removed were already magnetic, but others weren't, and I would not have been able to use my magnetic palette had I not had these magnets. And the last thing I wanted to touch on was technique, process. Definitely putting things against a heater, which I suppose could be considered a tool as well, was helpful. I didn't leave things on for terribly long, and some of the palettes just didn't require it, but the Dominique Cosmetics palette was wonderful to have. The heater, it definitely softened the adhesive, and I ended up not damaging any of those shadows. In terms of the technique, so definitely with cardboard, cutting around the edges and peeling back, but I did find, not sure if you could tell in the video when I was depotting the She Glam palette, but I ended up having to take this tool and really dig underneath into the cardboard below the adhesive to pop those up. So if you're having difficulty loosening the adhesive and the heater is just not helping, try that. Try taking your tool and really digging down, or as I tried with some of them, kind of cutting around the perimeter of the shadow to do so. And the last sort of technique related thing is it pertains to removing the adhesive actually from the back of the shadows once you have them taken out. So this wasn't really an issue with the Jaclyn Cosmetics or the She Glam shadows, but with the Dominique Cosmetics shadows, try and remove one here. They still have some adhesive on the back, so I will definitely need to go through with an adhesive remover. But the adhesive on these was different. It wasn't as dry and solid. I did heat these, of course, so that, you know, would have softened the adhesive, but I let them sit for quite some time before I began to try and remove the adhesive, and it never really seemed to set. So what I ended up doing was taking this empty palette, which you could use a book or whatever you have, and putting the shadow face down on the palette and taking my depotting tool and scraping. I was concerned that during the process of removing the adhesive, I might further damage some shadows, and I didn't. And I think it was because I used this process. So that's something that I hadn't really seen on any other depotting videos I've watched that I wanted to address here. So I think that's really what I learned. This was a lot of fun. I'm looking quite forward to rearranging, swatching, decluttering, which will be my next video. So thank you so much for watching, sticking around. I'd love to hear from you if you've depotted your own palettes, and if so, any tips or tricks you picked up. If you enjoyed this video, I'd love for you to subscribe, give me a thumbs up, and I will see you in my next video.